You may remember that soon after the Soviet Union ceased to exist, in I think it was February of 1992, Yeltsin came to the United States, and he addressed a joint session of Congress. And he said, the people of Russia are offering their hand to the people of the United States in friendship to build a better world, a world without war, a world without peace. And this was exactly what the vast majority of Russians wanted. And I would even say that today, the vast majority of Russians would like to have, if not a friendship with the United States, at least a partnership. There's no doubt to my mind that that's the case. So that was what Yeltsin wanted. And what kind of response did he get? What kind of response did Russia get? Well, the United States could have picked two ways of treating Russia. One was to say, let's treat Russia like we did our enemies after World War II. Germany, Italy, and some of the countries that were occupied, such as France, or were not occupied, such as UK, but were really badly hurt. Let's find a way to see to it that in those countries, Nazis, fascists do not come back, and communists do not come to power. And may I remind you that in those days, the Communist Party of France and the Communist Party of Italy were very, very powerful. And that plan turned out, was called later the Marshall Plan, which was basically a financial idea to spend a lot of money, but in a very precise way, to develop certain things and not to allow others to develop. Now, that could be the policy to adopt vis-a-vis Russia. See to it that democracy begins to develop in that country. And let me say, just for the record, Russia never, in its entire 1,000 years, never had democracy. Completely absent. So it wasn't like something that once upon a time Russians had and then they lost, but they knew what it was. They didn't know what it was. So let's spend money on getting democracy moving in Russia and seeing to it that the communists do not get back. And that could have been one approach. The other approach was to say, for 40 years, you held a nuclear bomb over our heads. You lost the Cold War, and you're going to pay for it. You're going to be punished for what you did. And there were people who supported one view and people who supported the other in this country. Early in 1992, a document was produced in the United States by a gentleman called Paul Wolfowitz. You may know who he was. He was Undersecretary of Defense of the United States, responsible for policy. The document he produced came to be called the Wolfowitz Doctrine. Not officially, but that's the way it was addressed. It later was incorporated in something that is officially called the Bush Doctrine. That document was leaked to the New York Times, and so it became public. And what it basically said, and you can look it up, it's available, just go to Wolfowitz Doctrine and you'll find it. What it basically said was this: the United States should never again allow any other country to challenge it. The United States must remain the superior country. And we should tell our allies not to worry about developing their own weapons because we will do that for them. And we must watch out for Russia because we don't know which way it's going to go. The bear might get up on his hind legs again and growl. When that document was leaked to the New York Times, there was an outcry by the more liberal, if you will. In America now, the word liberal and conservative has lost the meaning that it once upon a time had. So when I say liberal, I'm not sure that I'm saying the right word, but at least many people were upset by this document. Edward Kennedy said that it was an imperialist document that no country could or should accept. It was quickly, as it were, removed and rewritten by Mr. Cheney, not a very liberal man in any sense as far as I can remember, and the Secretary of Defense in those days, Mr. Powell. But basically, it retained that view. Russia and America must be the only superpower. And basically, that view was the one that was accepted. It was the one that was accepted. And the attitude towards Russia was pretty much, you're no longer a superpower. You are a second-rate country. Just keep quiet, please. This became evident and would be evident to you if you follow the policy of the United States. Now, let's begin with going back to Gorbachev and his meetings when he was asked by several people, all of them quite important, to allow Germany to reunite and take down the Berlin Wall. And he was told by James Baker, and now this is not many people, I mean, when I would say this, many people would say, it's not true, it's not true. He was told by James Baker, if this happens, NATO will not move 1 inch eastward. Well, not long ago, on December 12th, 2017, the National Defense Archives of George Washington University declassified the minutes of the Baker-Gorbachev discussion, and it's there. But it's not only Baker who said that to him. There were several people who did. The German leadership did, West German at those days, and so on. And finally, I'm not saying, I don't know whether Gorbachev could have stopped Germany from reuniting, but the fact of the matter is that they said yes and took down the Berlin Wall. And NATO stayed put. It stayed put in those days. It stayed put under Bush Sr. It stayed put during the first 4 years of Clinton. But in the next 4 years, in 1996 approximately, a decision was taken to enlarge NATO. 3 countries, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary. Now, I'm going to read something to you. You know who Thomas Friedman is? New York Times, old hand columnist. He, when this happened, this is 1998, he called up George Kennan. I don't know if you're all aware who George Kennan was, but he was one, in my opinion, perhaps one of the most brilliant minds, political minds of the United States in the second half of the 20th century, the man who devised the idea of containment of the Soviet Union rather than war against the Soviet Union, successfully did this. So, you know, a brilliant man who established the very foundation of US policy vis-a-vis the Soviet Union. So Thomas Friedman called him up. The article he published in the New York Times is called Foreign Affairs, Now a Word from X. Why X? Because in 1947, in the magazine Foreign Affairs, Mr. Kennan had published this article about containment, and he signed it X. So he called him up and he asked him, what did he think about this decision to enlarge NATO? Let me quote. I think This is May 2nd, 1998. "I think it is the beginning of a new Cold War," said Mr. Kennan from his Princeton home. "I think the Russians will gradually react quite adversely, and it will affect their policies. I think it is a tragic mistake. There was no reason for this whatsoever." That decision, and now I'm giving you my opinion, is what really started this relation, turning it south, as you might say. That's where it all began. Because the Russian reaction, and specifically this is 1998, so this is Yeltsin, late Yeltsin, was, "You promised not to do this. So how do we trust you if you make a promise?" I would also like you to perhaps try to solve a little problem. It's a kind of not mathematical. Take the time from when Gorbachev came to power, March 1985, to 2007, when Putin has been in power for 7 years. That's 22 years. I ask you to find a single thing in foreign or domestic policies done by the Soviet Union while it still existed, and then Russia proper, that might in any way anger, irk, disappoint the United States. Let me answer that for you. Nothing. Not one thing during that period. Now, what did Russia get as a result of that? First, the enlargement of NATO. So that was number one. Then the bombing of Yugoslavia. That was done by NATO, and NATO is, after all, dependent mostly on the United States, let's face it, right? The UN did not condone this. So the bombing of Yugoslavia, that's from March 24th, 99 to June 10th, 99. Then Kosovo, and recognition of Kosovo, although it had been part of Serbia for centuries. And there were people in Russia who said, "You're letting the gin out of the bottle, because if you do this, then there are other countries that will do the same." And Russia did the same, vis-a-vis Abkhazia, to begin with, okay? Yeltsin was very angry. He made a speech. He said, and of course this is very Yeltsin-like, he said, "We're not Haiti. You can't treat us like Haiti. We're a great country. We have a great past, and Russia will come back. Russia will come back." He was really, really angered. Didn't say the politically correct thing, but he spoke his mind. Then finally, the year 2000, Mr. Putin is not elected, although elected, to the presidency. And one of the first things he does is to ask for Russia to become a member of NATO. Why not be a member of NATO? NATO was created to defend Europe, and perhaps not only Europe, from Soviet aggression, from a country that you couldn't predict. There is no more Soviet Union, and there is no more Warsaw Pact. Why can't we create an organization where we're part of it, said Mr. Putin, and act together to protect from some kind of aggression?